They say the desert remembers everything. Every hoofbeat, every tear, every drop of blood spilled beneath its burning sun. And if you listen long enough, when the wind slides through the canyons of Arizona, you might still hear the story of the Apache woman who hunted a cowboy for revenge, but found something she never expected. Her name was Nayeli. The land had taken everything from her, her brother, her people's peace, the laughter that once filled their camp. All she had left was a name whispered on the dying breath of a wounded scout. Luke called her. A cowboy with a scar and a past soaked in guilt. She rode after him through the dry ribs of the desert, each mile heavy with anger and sorrow, until the sun itself began to fade. The red cliffs stood like watchful spirits as she tracked him into a lonely town called Sundown Ridge, where strangers' eyes were cold, and the air reeked of fear and gossip. She saw him there, the man she'd sworn to kill. He wasn't what she expected. Not a monster, not the ruthless killer she'd built in her mind. He was quiet, helping a widow fix her fence, the sun resting soft on his weathered face. Her rage trembled, uncertain. Revenge didn't fit the shape of this moment. That night, she set her trap in the arroyo, but fate twisted. A wild horse bolted from the dark, its hooves striking him down. She could have let him bleed into the sand, could have let justice do her work for her. But when she saw him groan, helpless and human beneath the stars, her hands wouldn't let go of mercy. She dragged him to an abandoned cabin where moonlight slipped through the cracks like ghosts. The fire burned low, shadows playing across his face as he slept. When he awoke, he didn't ask who she was. He only whispered, "Thank you." His voice was hoarse, touched by something broken. They spoke little in the days that followed. Words were brittle things between enemies. Instead, their silence filled the room like a fragile song. She changed his bandages, fetched water, mended her knife sheath. He, in turn, mended the cabin door, sharpened her arrowheads. The rain came one night, soft as forgiveness. The scent of mesquite filled the air. He told her, barely above a whisper, that years ago he rode with men who raided an Apache camp, not out of hate, but fear. "I thought I was protecting folks," he said, eyes far away. "But fear makes fools of men." Nayeli froze, her heart thundering. That camp, that raid, her brother. But when she looked at him, she saw not the killer from her nightmares, only a man drowning in the same river of regret she swam in. In that silence, something fragile began to bloom. Not love, not yet, but the trembling of something alive. He reached for her hand once, to pass her a cup. Their fingers brushed, and she felt the jolt of something dangerous, something human. She pulled away, not because she feared him, but because she feared what forgiveness might cost. Word soon spread through Sundown Ridge. The townsfolk began whispering, "That cowboy's taken up with a savage." The sheriff, a man more afraid of talk than truth, came to Luke's door and told him to send her away. Luke just shook his head. "She saved me when no one else would," he said simply. The sheriff spat in the dirt. "You'll regret it." Nayeli heard the gossip, saw the way folks' eyes followed her like the crosshairs of a rifle. She packed her things before dawn, determined to disappear before her presence brought him more harm. But the world had other plans. That night, drunken voices echoed from the saloon, the same men who'd once ridden in fear through her people's camp. They jeered at Luke, calling him a traitor, a fool. She stepped through the swinging doors like a whisper of wind and fire. The saloon went quiet. Dust hung between lantern light and silence. Luke stood, ready to fight, hand hovering near his gun. But she touched his arm, and he stopped. Her eyes met the men's, calm as the storm before rain. "Enough blood," she said, her voice carrying the weight of mountains. The men didn't move. Then one by one, their bravado cracked. Something in her gaze, steady, unafraid, turned them to dust. They backed away, muttering. Luke lowered his hand. The whole town saw it that night, that a woman could wield power without ever drawing steel. The next morning, the desert wind carried them to the canyon's edge, the same place her brother had fallen. She stopped her horse and turned to him. "I hunted you," she said, her voice breaking, "for my brother." His eyes didn't flinch. He stepped down, placed his revolver in the sand. Then do what you came for. The world held its breath. She lifted the gun, but her hands trembled. She saw her brothers smile, the sunlight on their camp, the faces of her people. She saw Luke's quiet kindness, the way his eyes softened when he spoke to her. Tears blurred the desert. The gun slipped from her fingers and fell soundlessly into the dust. The ravens lifted from the canyon in a black wave. The wind sighed, as if even the earth had been waiting for this moment. Luke whispered, "Then maybe now we both get to live." When they parted, the sun was setting, the color of blood turning to gold. Some say she rode back to her people. Some say he followed months later. But others, passing through the southern ridge, swore they saw a small homestead by the river, smoke rising, 2 horses tethered near the porch, a woman singing in Apache while a man mended a fence, smiling. The old ones say the desert never forgets. But sometimes, under a blood-red sky, it forgives. And when it does, love grows in the unlikeliest soil, between enemies, between wounds, between the silence of 2 broken hearts learning to beat again. Like, share and subscribe to Frontier Myths, where the dust of the Old West still carries stories of love, redemption, and the kind of courage that doesn't draw a gun. Leave a comment if the wind still speaks to you tonight.